Hello everybody, welcome back to Momo vs. MTG. Today we'll be taking a look at another personal commander deck tech on Polukranos Reborn. For 3 forest, you get a legendary Hydra, Reach, and for 6 and Phyrexian, as either planes or pay with life, transform Polukranos Reborn, activate only as a sorcery. So this came out in March of the Machines. There's already a Polukranos, but this one is a new rendition on it, and it's gearing towards Hydra Tribal. Pretty neat deck, and it's pretty straightforward. This is probably one of the most straightforward decks I have, and that's what I really like about it, and it's a fun one to pull out. So when you transform it, it turns into Polukranos Engine of Ruin. So it's a legendary creature, Phyrexian Hydra, reach lifelink. Whenever Polukranos Engine of Ruin or another non-token Hydra you control dies, create a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with reach, and a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with lifelink. So yeah, pretty cool commander. It's a different spin on the Hydra Tribal. Instead of the big X spells, which Hydras usually have, it's kind of the reverse, where you want them to die. And I really wanted to take the deck in that direction and take advantage of their death triggers, especially the Hydras, the cheap ones, because you can cast them for 0 most of the time, and they will simply pass away and get this death trigger. So that is the direction I went. I really like the deck. Without further ado, let's jump right into this. Let's take a look at that ramp package. You know where I like to start. 10 pieces of ramp here. Mainly you're looking for forest early on for your commander, and also the ramp is also forest, so that's what you really want. Just a Soul Ring, and the rest are the grab fetch lands like Nature's Lore, Farseek, Secure Tribe Elders, always nice. 3 visits, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach. Evasion is Zendikar, which is a newer one, and it turns into a battle, grabs you 2 forests, but then when you defeat the battle, it turns into a Vigilant Haste creature and adds mana. And as long as it's on the battlefield, it's a land in addition to its other types. So very, very nice little card here to ramp us up. Sky Shroud Claim, right? 2 forest cards, put on the battlefield untap, which is the important part. And Defiler of Vigor is probably one of the best ramp cards in the deck. A little more expensive, you got to get there. However, has this funny text. Has trample. In addition to an additional cost to cast green permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost green less to cast if you pay to life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of green mana you pay. And the important distinction with these cards is it only will pay for the first mana symbol. You cannot pay all the green in Phyrexian mana, that way. Only the first pip. So keep that in mind. Sorry, Rage Extractor, huh? The ruling text is pretty funny on here. But anyways, and then whenever you cast green permanent spells, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So it grows the token Hydras we create afterwards. Once it basically pays for the Hydras, because we have a lot of 1 mana Hydras in the deck. So we can basically cycle through them. So after that, let's just take a look at all the categories go down. So we have artifacts here. I only threw Unlicensed Hearse because it is Graveyard Hate in the deck. And it's a nice fit anyways. It's always good to have some Graveyard Hate in your deck. 3 board wipes here. Stirge Command, we could take advantage since we are tokens. We could destroy all the expensive creatures, get rid of the important artifacts, enchantments. Nice to have. Eternal Wanderer, I think, is probably the best creature-based board wipe, in my humble opinion. Because you choose their worst creature, they keep that, and then they have to sacrifice the rest, so very powerful. And Dust Dawn is a no-brainer in this deck, because destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, so that is the Phyrexian Hydras we'll be creating with our commander. However, the aftermath is return all cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand, which is all the Hydras, since they technically have 0/0 power. So great fit the deck. More recent addition, today is Juniper Ascendant I added for 2 and 2. To Selesnya, sorry. It is a human monk, legendary creature, good on its own. Has hexproof unless it is attacking. Whenever a creature you control with reach attacks, untap it, and it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power this combat. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat to a player, draw a card. So, potentially if you're swinging all out, you get some decent card draw. Untap stone allows them to block on the swing back, the crack back. So, really nice addition. That was more recent. I added. An AO Dawn Sky is just a feel-good creature. This is, the creatures outside the tribe. This one works exceptionally well. I have a deck tech on him. If you're curious, I'll leave a link up there. But when it dies, you get a flying vigilance creature, 5/4 for 5 mana. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put any number of non-land permanent cards with total mana of 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, which is the mode we'll usually be choosing, but we can put 2+1/+1 counters in each permanent you control that's a creature or vehicle. So we already have a lot of token hydras out. We can buff them once he passes away. Or we could choose the first option to dig for the hydras, which is very powerful as well. Because a lot of our hydras are 1 CMC. Because if we hit like 4 of these hydras, they all come in the battlefield with 0/0 counters. They die right away, but they will all trigger our commander, creating a ton of hydras. So I think it's a nice addition to the deck. Fits really nice. Either mode works really well here. On our game plan, we threw in as many doublers as possible. So we have the Anointed Procession, Mondrak, Parallelize, Roaming Thrones, Choosing Hydras, Doubling Season, and Ojitar, of course, more recent in Caverns of Ixalan. Because doubling creatures wasn't good enough, why not triple the amount of token creatures we could create? So it's really go wide strat. Has a lot of sustain with the lifelink and can block a lot of stuff with the reach hydra. So, very powerful deck once the engine starts going off, which, funny in the name, it is the Engine of Ruin, right? So it is a straightforward engine deck and pretty simple to play and pretty fun to play as well. The doublers aren't necessarily needed. They do take a more expensive portion of the deck. You could definitely do without, but I think it's just fun to add. So let's take a look. We have the draw package, Arch of his Ogma, kind of a white staple. I really like this card. Rite of Harmony was a newer addition, right, for Selesnya. Instant, whenever a creature enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So if we cast that, 0/0 Hydra, we get a card draw. And when it dies, our commander triggers, creating 2 Hydras, we'll get 2 more draws. And again, if we have doublers, this only grows. So a really nice one-shot. But the best part is it also has flashback, right? You could do it again to draw a ton of cards. So very cool to see. Elemental Bond. The first 0/0 Hydra we'll be casting won't trigger, but we'll create 2 3/3s. We'll be drawing 2 cards. So a lot of value here. One of the best draw card engine. Terskel's Welcome is similar, but only once per turn and mana value 3 or less. So not as good, but draw cards. Tribute to the World Tree is an excellent card. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card of its power 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2+1/+1 counters on it. So yeah, either draws his cards or puts counters, so it's very powerful. Guardian Project for 4 mana. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control, draw a card. So green and white together have some of the best card draw synergistically with just creatures. So really nice to see. And then lastly, we have Rishkar's Expertise for 6. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. I mean, your commander for 3 mana base value is a 4/5 for 3 mana, so that's already good. Flips, it's a 6/6. Draw a ton of cards, then you can play a spell with 5 CMC or less for your hand without paying its mana cost. So you're usually going to draw into something and want to drop it. Very cool. Some funny enchantments we have. To really sweep the game in one turn, Concordat Crossroads is a nice one to have because it gives every creature haste. And you gotta be careful with this one. It is a world enchantment, so it gives all your opponent's creatures haste as well. So hopefully you're swinging for game in the first shot with this. And then Steely Resolve is one of the best protection spells as an enchantment in tribal decks, right? For 2 mana. Choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type can't be target of spells, so it gives them Shroud. Very, very powerful effect. And I go into some of the hydras, but they're mainly here just for the death trigger, right? We really care about that 0/0 toughness and all that stuff. So when they die, they instantly create the 3/3 hydras tokens. That's what we really want. Um, but there are some funny effects on these. Like you can like a goat hydra is pretty funny. Reselect, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then you may reselect which player this thing attacks. So kind of cool. Pharaoh hydra, put a +1/+1 counter. Anyone can do this, I guess, for whatever reason. Hungering hydra can't be blocked by more than one creature. Deals damage. Put the counters. It can grow itself. Mistcutter hydra can't be counter. Protection for blue. Like all this stuff. A lot of them don't have a lot of benefits other than you wanting them to die for the trigger. Protein hydra, same deal. There's some notable ones which I'll try to pick out, which I've... Reinforceability is interesting. You can discard it, put +1/+1 counters on stuff. But you mainly want them to enter the battlefield and die right away. And then we ran out of 1 mana hydras. You have Genesis hydras, and these are a bit better, right? This is one you may want to dump mana into because you reveal top X cards in your library, put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them on the battlefield, shuffle the rest. It's a good way to dig from your library, get to your important permanents. Invasion of Ikoria is, technically a 2 mana Hydra because you can go get your 1 mana Hydra with the tutor if X equals 1. And then later on, it flips into a nice reach creature, 8/8 dinosaur. For each non-human creature you control, you may have it deal assign combat damage if those was a block. So basically better trample in a way, right? Primordial Hydra doubles counters, puts counters on. Steelbane Hydra is another one. It is doubles as removal, Turtle Hydra, because you can remove a +1/+1 for 3 mana, destroy artifact in your enchantment. So nice options to have, right? Ferocious Hydra enters, it fights, or you can have it double whatever X is, right? So cool. And then the other important stuff, since we are a very creature-focused deck, we want to protect our board state, so we have stuff like Heroic Intervention, Nefarious Protection, and Clever Concealment. Phasing out of creatures or giving indestructible hexproof are very powerful, and we do need those. Land-based, I don't want to cover too much. The important ones are like Lay of Hydras, right? Because you become a Hydra until end of turn. Sage you and stuff. Destroy. Nice options. Destroy artifacts or enchantments. Mirror Sky Ruin, right? Free reanimation from the graveyard, since a lot of our Hydras are going to die if we control a lot of planes. So we want forests early on, planes later on, of course, to trigger this. Balgid Recovery is dual modal, right? It can be a land or it can return something from the graveyard to your hand. So really good, really good. And then the last part of the deck that really puts it back online, of course, is Abiding Grace. Is one of the best enchantments for the deck, right? Being your land step, choose 1, gain a life, return target creature with mana value 1 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So Abiding Grace gives us another death trigger on one of these Hydras that we already cast earlier in the game. And same thing with Magnanimous Magistrate for 6 mana. Enters the battlefield with 5 reprieve counters. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, if its mana value is 1 or greater, you remove that many reprieve counters from the Magistrate. If you do, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So yeah, we can get up to 5 triggers of one of our Hydras dying if we have our commander out, right? And repeatable of that is very good. And then there are some combos in the deck. So I'll just jump to the sack outlets, right? Namely Ashnod's Altar. And, if we have a bunch of... This is how we generate big X-Spell Hydras if we get to that point in the game, where we can sack a lot of the creature token Hydras we created and now dump a lot into these Hydras here and grab something great. So... make a really big Hydra. So it goes both ways. It's just usually you're going to have your Hydras dying first before they get bigger, right? With Ashnod's Altar. And there is an Infinite Sorts, I think, with Ashnod's Altar, Nim Deathmantle, and her commander. because when he also dies, creates 2 hydras, and we have Nin Deathmantle out. We can then sack those hydras to pay for Polukranos' cost to have him come back as a creature. Same deal with Ao the Dawn Sky. You can, I think, generate enough mana to keep casting him or reanimating him with Nin Deathmantle. So that's interesting of note. If we have enough, token hydras on the board. So that's pretty cool. So, further down the recursion line, we also have stuff like Ascend from Avernus, right? We can dump into X, return all creatures and planeswalker cards with mana value X or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. So X equals 2, we get all our hydras back, basically, that are put there. So that's really good. Savine's Reclamation, grab a CMC3, important one, put it right back. And, of course, Flashback is nice. And, of course, one of my pet favorite cards, Enduring Renewal here, for 4 mana, you play with your card revealed. And if you draw a card, reveal the top card of your library instead. If it's a creature card, put it into your graveyard. Otherwise, draw a card. When a creature card is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return it to your hand. So now we have a way to repeatedly cast these cheap hydras again and again. Of course, the downside is, everyone sees our hand, they see our game plan, but I think it's worth the effect of, repeatedly dropping these cheap hydras, getting these tokens, and, going off that way. And lastly, Sun Titan's a nice value piece. Attacks or enters the battlefield, return 3 CMC or less to the battlefield. So, some nice cards here. It all flows nicely. Then we have a removal. I like the Swords of Plowshare, Broken Bonds, get rid of Artifact or Enchantment, also ramps you, Darksteel Mutation, one of the best removals, and especially on Commanders. Kenrich's Transformation, right, is really good. Draws a card, turns him into a 3/3, Beast Within, and Generous Gift. Both the, destroy any permanent, which, Selesnya does really nice. And Lorna the Third Path, I really like as a card, right? Destroys Artifact Enchantment and his card draw later on. We have a Silverback Elder, right? Whenever you cast a creature spell, which we will be doing a lot because we have cheap creatures, get to destroy Artifact or Enchantment, really good. Look at the top 5 cards. Your library, put a land from among them on the battlefield tap, put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. So ramps us, really good, or gain life. So all these options, really nice. And then we have a couple tutors. So Enlightened Tutor is a really nice one because it grabs our Nim Deathmantle or our Sack Outlet, Phyrexian Altar, and puts it right on top. Evolutionary Leap's pretty cool. Gives us a Sack Outlet for the creatures in case our hydras are too big or something like that. And we can go grab another Hydra and keep doing this over and over again. Or just, sacrifice one of our tokens to go grab another Hydra and probably be able to cast it. So really good card. Talk about Ashnod's Altar. And Fanatical Devotion's a nice one because it is pseudo-protection, right? Generate target creature at the cost of sacrificing a creature. This is repeatable effect. So really, really cool. Keeps your creatures around longer, which is, what you need. Yeah, that's pretty much the deck in a nutshell. This is probably one of the quicker deck techs I've done, but it flows pretty cool. I think it's a neat concept and definitely a different take on Hydra Tribal as opposed to usually dumping a lot of mana into the X spells, which again we can get there if we have a bunch of tokens and we generate a ton of mana off Ashnod's Altar, but it's not the main game plan of the deck. Without further ado, thanks for hanging out with Momo versus MTG. If you have any decks you want me to take a look at, please let me know, or comments about this one. Say something down below, reach out to me. I'd love to take a look at one of your decks. But yeah, look out for further stuff in the future. And without further ado, thanks for hanging out with Momo versus MTG. And until the next one, see you when I see you.